This is the Evolved Educator podcast. Each episode, we're talking about education and teaching. Our goal is for you to feel part of the community, and we want to learn from you. We hope that you learn something from us too. So welcome. Today, we're starting a series on the heart, the core of planning.
The essence of planning.
We're going to be focusing on the shifts that started about 2 decades ago that reframed our understanding of learning. I'm Jennifer.
I'm Chanmi.
I'm Michaud. So you mean that teachers have always, been doing their best with what they knew, but then Common Core came out after that reading first research. Do you remember that? The reading first research?
Yeah, we've talked about that a couple of times.
Yeah, so that was when there's this research that asked teachers to give very scripted, explicit, direct instruction. The students didn't get a chance to even speak hardly. And it was all like iterate, I forgot, it was IRE, iterate, the teacher asks the questions and the kids answer the question. So teachers have always been doing their best with what they knew at the time. And about 10 years ago, Common Core was developed out of that reading first research. Do you remember the reading first research?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
Right, that was about the direct instruction and that it just was not working for the kids.
Right. It produced a generation of illiterate people, so they could read, but they hated reading. So right. That didn't work. Mm-hmm. And so then Common Core was developed, and even for states who don't actually use Common Core, the states use something that's Common Core like. So mm-hmm. It promotes critical thinking and problem solving as opposed to just fact finding. It's about the process, not the product. Mm-hmm. And at the same time that the United States was figuring out a different way to teach children, the whole world was moving into this era of technology, specifically the internet, which made information accessible to everybody at any given time, from your pocket even. Right. So it was pretty amazing time in the past 10 to 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. And as teachers, then we were posed with this, we were trying to prepare students to be a productive, contributing member of society. So, back in the early days of public education, the goal at that time was to prepare students to be obedient. Mm-hmm. And that's why we have things like the bell system.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so with all these changes, particularly now, with this era of the internet, if we continue with that model, then we're not really preparing our students for the jobs that exist now, let alone for ones that don't even exist yet.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, teachers have always been preparing students to be a contributing member of society, but now what that looks like is very different.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's why this brings us to our segment. When you know better, you do better.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Maya Angelou. That's one of my favorite quotes. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the shifts were pretty big, particularly in literacy, math, and science with the standards. You already referenced about the rigor,
Mm-hmm.
but so much of it with the shifts was about this process, the
Mm-hmm.
practice standards, and how, these are things that we can be teaching our students from kindergarten all the way up. So,
Mm-hmm.
More focus was on the practice than the specifics of the content. The content was not being lost, but we were focusing more on how to put those practices with the content. And that was a big shift.
Right. And, some people might ask, why do we even need to know about these shifts? And the answer is because we need to frame the understanding for students to know why they are learning what they're learning.
Right. Right. And then when you understand the shifts, we, the teachers, we know what the students need to do, which is to be able to be there, asking their own types of questions, solving their own problems, thinking really critically, creating, inventing.
I know someone that works at Google and some other similar tech companies actually too. They use this term ambiguity. Actually that's come up in my work too as a mentor and coach, is that we know that the future is ambiguous. And so there's just some things where you need to have that flexibility, you need in thinking and being responsive. And so we just also don't need to know like how to use an adding machine.
Right. Well, so what you're saying is we don't need to know facts. We need to know how to find the facts.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And that's where the process is.
Exactly. About the process. Yes. So, and going back to what we need to know, it's how to analyze, if you're going to use that accounting analogy, we need to know how to analyze that ledger. So then we're talking about looking at patterns and trends. Yeah. And we're not saying that doing the actual math is not important. Of course it's important, but that's not all. That's not the end.
Right.
Yes. So, I think steps towards like knowing what to do though, is that first we need to think about like being an advocate. Like we wanted to be that advocate when we first entered our teaching profession. I think a lot of us, we wanted to make a difference, and inherent to what we believe is that education is the great equalizer.
Absolutely.
The best way and the practical way we can do that is to design personalized learning experiences for our students so they can reach their potential.
Right. We want the learning to be engaging. We want them to experience, we want the students to be able to experience this lifelong thrill of learning, something new. Sorry, I'll start that again. We want the learning to be engaging. We want the students to be able to experience this lifelong thrill of learning something new and having that confidence that you get when you struggle and persevere through something and you solve a problem and you use those critical thinking skills to do anything.
Right. That's an amazing feeling. I love it with kids. I love seeing kids get there.
Right.
So you're saying that as a teacher, the teacher is a creator and a designer of these experiences. And, almost every day I remember why I became a teacher. And Chanmi, you said that comment about education is the great equalizer. And to me, that means that when people are educated, they can accomplish anything. That's what solves the problems that we have. When people are educated, they can do what they need to do. When they know better, they do better. That's what that means. And so knowing that, I wanted to help students develop a love of learning so they continue to stay educated, so that they can always do anything that they want to do. And they can always be able to attack any problem that comes across their way.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's at the heart of it for so many teachers. And so now, we have as teachers this task of making sure that the learning that happens in our classrooms is balanced. The content with the pedagogy. It's about this process.
The process. And the best way to accomplish that is to know your students well. And you do that by listening to them and observing them, and then creating experiences that are for your students you have in front of you.
Absolutely. I also think it's so important to continue to surround yourself with this sort of professional learning community. And now, what's so wonderful about what has happened, particularly with the internet, is that this professional learning community for teachers, can stretch so far beyond the walls of your classroom. You can
your school.
Yes, exactly. And, you need to just make sure that you find people that you feel safe with and that have this sort of love of learning with you. And it's just such a powerful way to continue your learning, to be able to continue the students' learning.
Right.
Right.
So what do you think the lesson here today is?
Be responsive to your students. Be reflective of yourself. You're responsible to the students, and they deserve that. That's why we're here.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we got into this business.
Those are who we're here for. So.
Yes, exactly.
That's right.
Okay, so this brings us to our segment, Strategies That Get the W. And you know that each time we like to send you off with a little goodie, some strategies that you can use in your classroom starting right now. So Chanmi, what'd you come up with for today?
Today, I want to share with you a strategy. It's been around for a while, way before Common Core. Back in 1990, a couple of people in Kylie Beers actually recently just made some revisions to it. It's called Somebody Wanted But So. And it's a strategy that you can use during or after reading. And it's a way to like frame how to tell the action of a story or historical event by identifying some key elements. And so it helps students identify the main ideas. It can help them to recognize cause and effect relationships, helps them to make generalizations and identify differences between characters, or even look at various points of view. And the frame that you use is the main character, wanted is their motive, but so identifies the problem or conflict, and so is how the character attempted to resolve the problem. So it is often used more with narrative text, but there's like similar versions. You can use it with expository text, because you can use it to summarize like a goal or motivation or a conflict, a barrier in a historical contemporary character or a group of people. And you could even add a T to the end, which is the then to the strategy, to further challenge the students or expand the summary.
This strategy is new to me, but I have done it, and it's like magical. It just really helps frame the kids' thinking, and they did struggle with it. The few times that I did it, they did struggle with it a little bit, because you have to summarize and not retell. But it did help them really figure out what was happening with what they were reading. I love it.
I do too. I think it's great. You can use it with almost any grade level. I mean, probably any grade level. I've used it with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. And it changes a little bit, and with the support that they need, but it works. It is. I agree. It's magical.
Yeah, and I mean, you could use this all through high school. I haven't tried it, but I can imagine you could even use it with 1st and 2nd graders. I don't know why you couldn't.
I have used it with 1st and 2nd graders.
Have you?
Okay.
It's just because it frames the language, because in the standards, it just tells you to retell what happened 1st, 2nd, 3rd in this, in the beginning, middle, and end of a story. But we know that in the nuances of the standards, they want you to start going into what are the key important details and the main ideas, and that's where this helps to transition the students' understanding.
Yes, you're right. So that kind of gets lost. It does, in the standards, it does say recount or retell, and that's different than summarizing, and this does help summarize, but you're right, it helps identify main ideas. I'm going to try it with my 2nd graders next time.
Yep. Just did the lesson.
All right. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.